Good evening. Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Hey, let's see. Oh, let's see. Let's look at the syllabus. All right. So, yeah, it looks like we are halfway across the semester. Right? Wow. Good question in the chat. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so we are pretty much halfway through the semester, right? And in the first half of the semester, we focused on the front end, right? On the client side of a client server application. Right? There's two halves of the application that we're working on, right? It's a distributed application, sometimes referred to as multi-tier, right? And also is using an architecture called client server, right? And we've focused all of our effort the first half of the semester in building a web-based client, right? An application that runs on a browser, right? And it's going to serve as the front end, right? As the first tier, right? In a multi-tiered application. And it talks to a server, right? We realize that there is a limitation on just having the client, right? We have a user interface. We can interact with users. They can they can type, they can click, they can move the mouse, right? They can enter data, they can consume data, they can read, right? And but we have a limitation, right? We can control state, maintain state at the client side, right? But we saw that there's no way to make things permanent, right? And for that, we are going to add to our application a server side, right? The client is going to send HTTP requests to the server, so the server can, because it's going to execute outside of the browser, it's not going to have the limitations of the browser, right? It's going to be able to interact with the file system, right? It can talk to databases, it can make network connections to wherever it wants, right? So together, these two sides are going to collaborate, right, by sending HTTP requests to one another, right? And they're going to be completely separate projects, right? One is a React application running inside of a browser hosted on a Node.js server, and then the second is a completely different process, different repository, different directory, deployed to a completely different hosting service, right? And the only thing that they have in common is that they know of each other. They know the IP address of both machines, right? They can send messages to one another. Mostly, the client will initiate the request, right? We'll send the request to the server, and then the server will fulfill that request, right, and send back a response to the client, right, for rendering in the user interface. Okay. So the second half of the semester is focusing on the server side of a client server application. Okay, let's see. It's a question in the chat. Could you take a look at the code I have sent? Sure, Shuan. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be focusing on the server side. Let's see what else. Question in the chat. For the server and reducer, before we use reducer, now we start to use server for get data. Can I only use server to get the data and remove reducer? No, we are going to be using reducer. Reducer is, so the question is, and we've been using reducers to maintain state on the client, but now we seem to be maintaining state on the server, right? And so the question is, well, can the server state replace the client state? And the answer is no, right? They serve different purpose, although they are very well much related to one another. So we are going to be maintaining data in 3 different tiers, right? And we will have to deal with the challenge of maintaining consistency across the tiers. The client will maintain a cached version of the state. Right? It will only ever maintain a snippet, right? Small sliver of the data that the server has or the database has. Right, the only the portion that we can display at any one moment, right? So the state in the client will only be a small subset of the entire state that is maintained on the server or that is maintained on in the database, right? Just like you're scrolling through posts, right? In on Piazza or Canvas or in on Twitter or Facebook, as you're scrolling, right? You're only rendering maybe, I don't know, 24 posts at any one time. That is being maintained in the state in the client, right? It maintains that state of the things that are being rendered. And that's only a subset of the thousands or millions, right, of actual posts that are living either on the server or the database, right? So the reducer or use state or any state representation on the client, right? It is definitely required, right? We need to maintain this subset, this cached copy, right, of the actual state on the server and the database. And the challenge is that, if you are modifying something on the client, you're changing the title of a module, right? All that is happening in the client, right? In the local reducer or the use state variables in the client. When you hit save or updates, right, then the local copy of the state on the client is sent over to the server so that it can be actually saved, and we synchronize the state, right? So that now my copy in the client becomes a formal copy on the server, right? And the server notifies us saying, yeah, it has been saved, right? And so we can, maintain some kind of confidence that we are maintaining the states consistent across multiple tiers. Right. So same thing in right, if you're in a multi-user application where we're accessing the state on the server, right? The clients are only ever going to have a copy of that state, right? Say we all want to buy tickets to go to a movie, and we see that certain seats are taken, some seats are available, and we are maybe a dozen users that are looking at the same exact time slot, right? And we all see a copy. Some of us will have slightly different copies because everybody's requesting a seat. So it might be that we have inconsistent copies, right? This seat shows that it's available, and it turns out that I'm only looking at a stale copy of the reality, because when the data got to me, and it shows that it's free, actually somebody already took the seat, right? And I'll only know if it turns out that I select that already taken seat, right? And then I'll get an error saying, oops, sorry, somebody already took it. Unless you implement some kind of locking mechanism, right, where you're given a set amount of time, right, for the next, this is true for the next minute or so, right? That means that there might be dozens of other people that are waiting for me to make my decision, right? So there's a whole bunch of different considerations, especially when you start considering multiple users, right, using the same state, right? If we use state, do I need to use reducer at the same time, or it depends? It depends, right? So remember the purpose of the using reducers is that you want to share a state across multiple components or multiple screens, right, in the user interface, right? And you can also just use the regular state variables, but we talked about the challenges of sharing the state from top level components down to the children by passing attributes down to the children, right? And the challenge when you have a very deep hierarchy of components, right? And so what the solution to that is to use reducers. Right? So that's an entirely different set of problems, right, in the user interface. Like for instance, if you want to keep track of the person who's logged in, right, you want to keep it track for multiple screens, right, and multiple components. So you would store that in a reducer, and then each component can then ask, well, who's logged in, right? Who's the user who's logged in, and they can retrieve it from the reducer. But if it's something that it's not being shared, right, it only lives inside of one component, then is shared only between a small subset of components that it doesn't need to be shared across the entire application, then sure, use state is plenty. Use state is also useful for managing a form, right? When you're editing a form, usually you use a use state, right? And you're editing the form, blah, blah, blah. When you're done, then you click save. Then you can propagate that to a reducer, and the reducer can then share across multiple components, right? But again, all the problem here is that none of that is becoming permanent, right? And so to make it permanent, we need to send it to the server. The server has now the truth of state, right? That when I come back next time I log in, my component can then copy that state from the server, or the subset of that state, copy it into the user interface, into the reducers, the use state, whatever, right? Enough for me to display something on the screen, right? And then I can incrementally ask for more data, like if I navigate from a course, then to I look at a particular module, I look at a particular assignment, and I'm editing it, right? I can incrementally ask for more information to the server, to populate my local state for rendering, right? So that I can edit it or not, and then send back updates, right, or deletes, right, or create messages to the server. And then I maintain that permanent status in the server, but then a local copy in the client for rendering. Okay. All right, so that was a long-winded explanation of the kind of like the architecture of what we're building. Okay, yeah, so let's yeah, so we went over the purpose of this week. Right, to so assignment 5 went out last week, right? And we started working on it. I think we might have already completed the lab portion of the assignment together here in the lectures. And I'm going to share that source code with you. Feel free to reuse that source code as your own, right? I'll post it in GitHub. Some students have suggested some corrections to the code that I've shared. Excuse me. I'll take a look at those fixes. Right? I'll make changes to the pertinent exercises in the assignment. Well, today we're going to continue with the assignment, and we're going to take all those skills that we have been practicing in the lab exercises, and we're going to use them to apply those, right, to enhance the Canvas application, right, that we've been building, and add capability to make the state, right, permanent, right, on the server, right. So right now we had we have played around in the previous assignment of being able to create courses, be able to create modules, edit an assignment, but none of those changes are permanent, right? So today we're going to add support from the server, so that the server is going to be able to provide that kind of feature, right? So yeah, assignment 5 went out last Thursday, and all my assignments are meant to be 2-week long, right? So next Thursday, So not the day after tomorrow. Next week, Thursday, right, is the assignment will be due. And then we'll start talking about databases, right? So that'll be the topic of next week. Also, the project, you should be working on your project, right? You should be setting up a teams, right? On Canvas, you can set up a team, and then you can join that team and decide on what it is that you want to work on. Perhaps you should already have a prototype of the screens that you are going to be needing, right? You'll need a screen to be able to log in, to register, right? You'll need a profile screen. You'll need a search screen, maybe a detail screen. You need some kind of home screen. You need to be able to navigate between the screens and whatnot, right? And you can already style some of this. You can create some dummy data, right, to display for yourself, and so that you can style using CSS and make it look professional and finished and polished, right? The other challenge is that you need to choose a third-party API. So I'm going to start this process myself in the next coming lecture. I'm going to start illustrating many of those requirements, and we're going to work on it together. I'm going to get started on the project so that you can better understand the requirements of what's expected of you for the project, right? So I'll start that in the next lecture. But there's plenty of skill set already to be able to start working a good chunk of the project, right? What else? The quiz has been postponed, so I'll make it available later this week, right? So that you can take that quiz. And what else? I think that's it. Oh yeah, I had posted the answers to the first exam on Piazza. Please reply to that post, right? If you find any concern, or you look at your answers and you find that you discover another answer that also works just as well, right? And so let us know, and we can give you credit for that. Or if you found some kind of syntax mistake for the question, so you can fix it, right? And give credit where it's due. So yeah, so please reply to that post. Okay. What else? All right. Okay. So yeah. So let's look at assignment 5 and see how we can use the skills that we've been learning about implementing servers to augment the Canvas application, right? So let's if we look at the assignment 5, we've implemented all these exercises, right? We installed Node, right? We created a little application project, Node.js project. We implemented a small little hello world, and then we installed Express and implemented an HTTP server, right, that responded just with hello world, right? And we also learned how to send data to the server using path parameters, query parameters, or the body, right? We learned how to encode stuff in the path, how to encode it using query strings. We learn how to work with objects, that we can edit an object, or we can create an object inside of an array, and that you can modify items in an array, or delete items in an array, or add items at the end of an array, then retrieve certain items in an array by their ID or by some property, right? Creating new content, deleting, updating, right? Then we started discussing using Axios as a library for be able to send requests, but then capture the response, right? And be able to update the user interface with the response from the server, right? And we then discussed that these requests that are going from the client to the server are asynchronous, right? And it has its own particular technique of how to implement them, right? we looked at the old syntax using .then, right? Then we introduced the newer syntax using async await, right? We talked about the security policies enforced by CORS, or cross-origin request sharing, and we configured the server to support CORS. And then we worked on some of the previous exercises, but then we enhanced it using axios.get, post, put, delete, right? All right. Okay, we talked about the body, how to send data from the body. Okay, we'd work on that. All right, so let's see where we are in the labs and the projects. Okay, let me move this over here. Okay. Yeah, so let me open up the recent. This is 5610 Canvas, React, web app, CS. I think that's it, right? Yeah. And this will be the server project. So CS5610 Canvas, Node, server, app. I think that's it. Okay. And let's see where we are in branches. So git branch. Oh, there's no git here on the server. On the client, git branch. So this should be A5. Okay, good. And the last few exercises that we talked about is how to work with arrays, right? Being able to create to-dos, post to-dos, delete to-dos, right? Excellent. Yeah, so we worked on all those exercises. Perfect. Excellent. And on the server, we also implemented the URLs, the path, right, to handle those requests, right? Yeah, so definitely we completed everything all the way up to passing JSON and working on that. So I think we're ready to tackle the Canvas exercises, right? Having learned certain skills, we can come here and start actually implementing the Canvas application. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so one of the first things we need to do is that the current Canvas application, right, the current Canvas application relies on a local database, right? We had a database object, right, that collected all sorts of JSON arrays, right, that represented, assignments or courses, grades, modules, right? And so, but we need to move this permanent storage, right, of modules, of courses and whatnot. All this information should live in a database, right? That's where it should live, in an actual database. And so, but we don't have a database just yet, right? So we're going to take it into intermediate step. We're going to move the database to the server, okay? And this is going to give us a chance to learn how does the client application interact with the server, right? Asking for data about Canvas. So that is going to be, we're going to learn how to do that, right? Next week, we're going to put the data where it belongs, right? In the actual database, right? And so we'll focus on how the server talks to the database. The conversation between the browser, the client application, and the server, that's we're going to get done today, well, this week, right? And next week, we're going to focus on how the server talks to the database, right, and gets the data, right? But the client should not be affected at all, right? So that should be done in assignment 5. Assignment 6 will focus on the database part, right, without affecting any changes whatsoever to the user interface, right? The interaction between the user and the server. So the user and the server this week, and then the server and the database next week. Okay. Yeah. So in the Canvas application, right? We do need to retrieve courses because dashboard needs to render courses. The courses also here needs to render a particular course, if you navigate to that course. So right now it's relying, the dashboard is relying on the local database, right, in the client. So we're going to break that, and instead we're going to move it over to the server, and the server is going to need to host that information, and the client is going to need to go fetch it from the server, not from a local file system. Okay. All right, so let's do that. So I'm going to copy this database directory, and I'm going to paste it here in the server. Let's say paste. So this is my database, and I'm going to remove it from the client. Right? Well, not yet, not quite yet. We do need to make a few changes here. Node.js by default doesn't know how to load or import JSON files. Right? You need to tell it, right, what type it is to load it. So in the assignment, I give you, right, how to do that. Yeah, you need to assert when you're importing JSON, right, in Node.js on the server, you need to tell it how to interpret this file, right? And you do that by asserting like that. I'm just going to copy these here. And actually, we're only going to be caring about the courses, the modules, and the assignments. Let's not work with these yet. So I'm just going to comment these out, those three. We're just going to work with courses, modules, and assignments. Okay. So now we need to be able to what we want to do is the dashboard, right, that was using this database, right, array in this courses array in the database. We want to break that. We want to say, nope, I don't want to use the database anymore. Right? Instead, the courses live on the server. Go fetch them. Right? Go get them from over there. But let's not do that just yet. Let's run this first. npm start. Here it is. Okay, can you see that? There we go. So that's the dashboard, using the local database, right? So if I break it and I do that, the whole thing dies, right? So let's not do that just yet. Okay. So I want to go fetch the courses from the server, right? So okay, so here's the server. We copy the database. What we're going to do is that we're going to create a directory where we are going to have courses, and in here we're going to create all the HTTP routes, right, that we can send HTTP requests, and the server can respond with the data. So the request that we're going to make is give me the list of courses, right? Because I want to replace this here. I want to replace this with the courses that are on the server, right? So let's do that. So let's create some routes under the courses directory. So core routes. And I give you a cheat sheet for that. So yeah, there it is. So under courses routes, right, on the server. So on the routes, let's paste that. So what it's doing is that it's going to load the database. It's going to go up one and then down to databases, and it's going to load up this object, right? And we're going to have it right there. See, it's available. So this is just a function, right, which we're exporting, and it's declaring an express HTTP GET route, right, using the reference to app here, right? We're saying that if there's an HTTP GET and the URL matches API courses, then I'm going to retrieve the courses from database courses, and then I'm just going to send it back as JSON, right? So maybe this should be JSON. And we can do, np node mon app. Okay. So once we declare that, we can go to our app.js, import this brand new function. So it would be what do we call it? Course routes. So course routes, and we're going to pass it an instance of app like that. So now the server has now officially made the courses available at that route. If I hit it with a localhost 4000/API/courses, it should return the courses. Let's see. Right. So if we go here and say localhost 4000 and says API/courses, it returns the 3 courses. Perfect. We have the data. But I want to display this data in the user interface, right? So how do we do that? So we're going to use the technique that we used in the previous assignment, right? We're going to use the Axios library. Okay. Okay, so we have that. In app.js. Okay, we already did configure course. We already configured the parsing of the JSON body. Okay, good. So here in the dashboard, I want to go fetch those courses. So how do we do that? We want to basically use the Axios. We're going to import Axios, and I know Axios is going to allow me to do this. See that? This? I want to do that from the client. I want to make an HTTP GET request to the client, to that URL, and grab the response. I want to grab this response, but from within my React component. So how do I do that? So Axios.get allows us to do that, right? We can put this in quotes, right? We can put this in a parentheses, and this is app dot get. There we go. That. And so now in our component, I'm sorry, not app. I get Axios. There we go. And so if you inspect, you can look at the network tab, whether this actually happened. We're establishing a network connection. Let's refresh. Okay, so looks like these are it. No, let's see preview. Yeah, see that? That's the data coming from the server, right? The 3 courses coming from the server. So we are closer, right, to replacing our database here, right? All right, so how do I then grab it? Okay, so we're gonna have we need a place to store this, right? So we probably need a state variable, right? Anyway, but we have this get. We can do we can say const here's the response, right? And let's look at the response that comes from the server. We're gonna console response. So if we go back here and look at the console, right? And notice that what's being displayed is a promise, right? What is that? So a promise, I was expecting a response from the server, right? But instead we get a promise. And promise is a asynchronous mechanism, right? That allows one process running, somewhere in the network, communicating with another process, somewhere in the network, not necessarily co-located, right? This browser might as well be on the West Coast, right? Hitting a server here on the middle, on the eastern border, right? But then here the browser trying to connect to, a server, Node.js server that has the array of courses, deployed somewhere in the Middle East, or so yeah, these are distributed. And And so the communication between distributed processes, a good practice is to have them be asynchronous. And what we mean by asynchronous is that the execution of this code, for the most part, is sequential, right? You first do the first line, you complete that, then you go to the second line, and there you go, right? I mean, that's how we learned, right? That things execute sequentially. Not so in asynchronous. In asynchronous, now you would expect that when I make this call, access.get, and not until this completes am I allowed to go to the next line, right? So that's synchronous programming. And so today I'm introducing the notion of asynchronous programming, meaning that when the thread that's executing through here gets to this line, right? The request goes out to the server, but normally you would stop and wait for the response to come back, right? Well, not in asynchronous calls. So this is an asynchronous call, and it doesn't wait for the response to come back, right? Because it would be risky to block the thread to wait for this response to maybe not come back, right? If the server is down, or somehow what happened to a communication glitch, right? This is never going to respond, and so your single thread JavaScript browsers only have a single thread. You're compromising it and saying, oh my goodness, I risk blocking my single thread. And if that happens, right, your whole application gets blocked, right? You can't type, you can't move the mouse, right? You can't interact and enter data, right? Because you have this single thread, now busy forever waiting for a response that might never happen. I mean, eventually it'll time out, obviously, but nevertheless, it's annoying. So instead, what we get is a promise. We get a promise, not the actual the response. Okay, and what a promise is, like the name suggests, it says that I don't have the what you want right now, but I promise you that very shortly I will, right? And so don't wait. Go do whatever you need to do. Leave me a phone number and I'll call you, right? When it's done, when I have it, right? Go do other stuff, right? And then I'll let you know when it does actually happen, right? And the way it works is that you leave a callback function that the promise can then invoke, right, and call that function, right? So what you do is that you use the promise and you register there it is, right? You register a callback function like that. So now you use the .then function of the promise, right, to provide a callback function that will be invoked at a later time, right, with the actual response, right? So that you can go do stuff, but then when it gets to here, you can then process it. Let's see, question in the chat. What is a callback? So callback is a function. So this is a function right here, right? So a function that is meant to be invoked at a later time, right, is often referred to as a callback. That it's like you go to an interview, and they don't give you a response right away, and it says, leave your phone number, I'll call you, right? If we like you, leave a callback number so I can call you back, right, and let you know. So same thing like this, right? Something that in the future I can invoke you and notify you, right, that something happened, right? So in this function, it will be invoked sometime in the future, right, with the actual data, right, which in our case is a response from the server, right? And then we can console display the response like that, right? So now if I go back to the browser, we can see that we have the response from the server, in the promise. And the data, there's the data, see that? Right? So I have the data here. I can say console response.data. There's the data. There it is, the 3 arrays of those courses living on the server. So now I have to somehow, save it in a local variable, right, so that it can be rendered. So how do I do that? So typically the way we do that is by using a state variable, right? So what we do is that we're going to create a state variable, courses, so that we can modify it and then it re-renders. And then we have a set courses. And then we can say that use state. Right, so we have use state like that. Right, so this still should work. This still works, right? It's using the same database, right? It's using the same data. But what we're going to do is that now that we have the data here, we want to set it. We want to say set the courses, right, to the response.data, because we have the data. But careful with this approach, right? What happens here is that we get into an infinite loop. We get into an infinite loop. So I kill the browser. So what's happening is that once we have the data and I set it, this is empty. I set it to be the data from the server. This change in state causes the component to re-render, and the re-rendering causes a request to the server, and the server updates the user interface, which causes a refresh, which causes a request to the server again. So we're locked into an infinite loop. So we need a mechanism by which we can postpone this, right? Or not postpone it. We can do this only once, or only the first time, and then that's it, never again, right? So to do that, we can use well, first of all, let's put this instead of a function, right? We'll call it const fetch courses, like that, right? And then close this here, like that, right? So we have the function. And now we can re-render this. So we can go back to localhost, right? Okay, we don't have any courses because we're not calling this function, and now we're not setting the courses, right? But a good place to do it, right, to invoke this, because I mean you could do this, right, and then get again we're going to be in the infinite loop if I save that, right? So instead we want this to happen only once when the component loads. We want to invoke this fetch courses and then never again, right? So to do that, we use a function called use effect. Use effect is going to allow us to we'll get into an infinite loop. Ah! Okay, I gotta kill it. All right. We're going to be able to wrap this in a function. Right, it's going to wrap this in a function. So that we can invoke this at a later time. Well, not a later time. When we load, right, we're going to put this in a use effect like that, and we're going to return this little square brackets. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so now we should be able to safely load that. Right, we should be able to safely load this. So this would be localhost 3000. There it is. So this is data that's coming from the server. Right? It's no longer using the local one, right? I can even remove it, I think. Yeah, see that? We're not using the database anymore. I can just remove that. I'm no longer using the database in this screen. I'm using the data that comes from the server, right? If you don't believe me, right, I can go back here and change the courses, right? So this one is say rocket propulsion. So this is a server, right? The database in the server. And if I change this rocket propulsion, right, 101, save. I go back here and I refresh. There it is. See that? I made the change on the server and it's available on the client. Everybody good? All right. Yeah. So one thing here. So this syntax looks horrible, right? I mean, ideally, right? Ideally, we would do something like this, right? Ideally, we would do. I wish we could have done this instead, right? Something like const response, right? Axios like that, and then set courses response.data. I mean, that would have been great. Okay, so this is a syntax that I wish I could have used, right? I'm just doing the request, comes back with a response, right? And then the response.data, I can set the courses. Instead of this really, really ugly syntax of .then, right? And then get a callback, right? And then we call the set courses, yeah? So, well, there is a syntax that allows us to be more closer to what we wish we would have written. Right? And that syntax is called the async await, right? So to be able to do what we want to do, and not use this horrible syntax, right? We need to tag the function as an asynchronous function, right? And then the actual asynchronous call, the only asynchronous call is this axios.get, right? We tag it, right? In front of it, we put an await, like that. And if we save that and go back, you'll notice that I refresh, this still works correctly, right? So this new syntax is as an alternative to this older syntax. And but this older syntax is still widely used in industry. So I didn't want you to freak out if you started reading documentation, right? And you were looking at folks using this .get, right? .then, what the heck is that, right? And this callback function. So you've seen the syntax is there. I'm not going to use it. Well, actually, there's some exercises in the assignment which actually use it. But you're welcome to use this newer syntax. You just have to remember to make your functions async, right? And then put an await in front of the asynchronous call, right? Just have to remember that. So I'm going to focus on using this newer syntax. In reality, when this gets compiled, right? When this call like that with the async await gets compiled, it gets compiled to this. This is really what's happening behind the scenes, right? But instead of you writing it with this ugly syntax, right, you can just do async await, right, and then let the compiler rewrite it for you that way. Okay, so I'm not going to use this older syntax here, so it works. Everybody good? Okay. All right, so let's do a few more. Let's see. So we want to be able to, maybe delete a course, right? So how do we delete a course? So we would like to be able to have each one of these maybe next to the, here in the course name here. Maybe we could have like a button that we can delete. Right? Maybe over here, this could be a button that says delete. And maybe we can style it. This could be class name, button danger, danger, and maybe we can float it to the end like that, right? So then we click it, it deletes the course. Okay. So yeah, can we have it in the image? Oh no, that looks horrible. There we go. So how do we do this? Okay, so So on the obviously we need to be deleted on the server. So how do we delete it on the server? So what we need to do is going to be able to send a request to the server to please remove this this course. Okay. So we're going to use this. We're going to implement this delete route that is going to encode the ID of the course at the end of the URL, right? We're going to parse it from the URL like that, and we're going to find where it is in the array of courses. If we don't find it, we're going to respond a 404 saying, hey, we didn't find it. I think it's send status. Send status. Oh, actually, no. You can send both the status and the send the course not found. And I think we're missing a parenthesis somewhere. There we go. That. Okay. And delete basically is going to eventually splice out, that course that it found at that particular location, and then it's going to respond saying that, hey, I was successful. With maybe the 204 saying, yep, I was able to remove it. Right? So now how do we invoke this from the client? Are we going to be able to invoke this URL from the client, pass the ID of the course we want to remove? It'll remove it from the server, and then it's going to respond saying that it was successful. Now, from the client side, we need to synchronize, because you removed it from the server. Well, what about me on the client? I still have it. So if I get a 204, meaning a success, then I'm going to go forward and also remove it from the client, right? So that I can keep synchronized with the server. Now, if I get a 404 that was unsuccessful, right, then I'm not going to update the user interface, right? So I need to handle that error from the client. So let's do that. So let's create, just like we created here, a fetch. I want to be able to do Axios dot delete. So let's implement that. We'll say const delete course. Remember the async. We'll do an Axios delete. I'm going to encode the ID. I'm going to pass in the ID of the course that I want to delete. I'm going to send a Axios dot delete. See that? And I'm encoding the ID at the end. Perfect. So now we're not going to set the course because this is only going to come back with a with an error message or something, right? So I'm going to try to do this, right? Oh wait, no. Get the response. Let's see. It's a question on the chat. Everybody, I have a question for delete. If we delete a course, do we need to delete the modules for that course as well? Could you hold on for a second? Okay, so there's a delete, right? Let's see, there's a question saying, how is it? I have a question on delete. If we delete a course, do we need to delete the modules of the course as well in the database in the future for real production environments? Yeah, absolutely. So it depends, right? That's what's called a cascade delete, meaning that if you have dependencies between records, right, and the existence of one record depends on the existence of another record, then we say that there's a composite relationship, right, between the two, right, as opposed to an association, right? When you have a composite relationship, then one of the entities' existence depends on the existence of the other, so that if you remove one, then the others cannot exist without the context of the other one, right? So yeah, you would delete it. Now it could be that that certain content is shared amongst many, right? And so it would make no sense to remove things, right? So say there are modules that are used across multiple courses, right? Then it's not a composite, right? That there's a say there's a module that talks about the ethics, right, of online whatever, right? And so that would be a module that could be shared across multiple courses. So in that case, that if you remove the course, you don't want to remove the module because it's part of some other course as well. So then it's not a composite. And so you only create a relationship saying that these are related, but if you remove part of the relationship, it does not affect the other entity, right? I still want to keep it. For instance, if you have you have a whole bunch of products, right, and you have an order of those products, right, and you say, okay, well, this person ordered 3 apples or whatever, 3 pencils, whatever, and then the order has 3 pencils, 3 products, right? Now, what if you cancel the order? Does that mean that you also remove the records that represent those products? No, not necessarily, right? So even though you might you say that one is contained inside of the other, not really, right? The orders have references to the products, but if you remove the order, then you don't necessarily remove the product, right? So then we say that that's an aggregate, right? It's not a composition, right? So again, it depends. All right, that's much here. Yeah, so we have a delete. We have a delete. We're gonna pass the ID. It comes back, and what we're gonna do is that we're going to update. Now it's been removed on the server. So let's just do that. Let's just see what happens. Right? Let's do that. And we're gonna invoke it in the delete button that we created earlier, right here. Right? We're gonna say, on click, we're going to call the delete module. Oops. Delete course. Sorry, delete course. I'm going to pass in the course dot ID. Is it ID or underscore ID? I don't remember. Let's see. Courses. Okay, underscore ID. Okay. So we gotta make sure we're consistent. Underscore ID. There it is. So let's see. Right. If we go here and I refresh this, and if I see the courses there, these are all the courses in the server, right? And this is the data representation. Now, if I delete this, okay, access error says 404. Let's see. I don't know. The course was it removed? No, it wasn't removed. Let's see what's wrong with our URL. Let's see. The network. Let's try that again. Let's click on the delete. All right, so it went out to RS101. It says that course not found. Right, the delete came back with a course not found. Let's see, why would that be? Let's go to the server. The server in the routes. Okay, so it's course underscore ID. Okay, first of all, checking to see blah blah blah. Okay, so it was wrong. It was not implemented correctly on the server, right? It thought it was the ID without the underscore. So let's try it again. Let's refresh. And so let's do a delete. And it's still 404. What's going on here? So the course is fine. Find index of course ID equal parse int. Oh, it's not an integer, it's a string. Okay. Let's try it again. Let's refresh. And let's delete. Okay, so this time it didn't complain. And so we did pass an rs blah, 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 but it wasn't removed from the user interface, right? But if we go fetch it from the server, right, notice that indeed it was removed, right? So now there is an inconsistency between what the server thinks the courses are and what the user interface thinks it is, right? Now, one way to fix this is, well, there's two ways. One is well, there's three ways. The server could have responded. The server could have responded instead of a 204, it could have responded with the surviving array, right? An array of the surviving courses, right? The ones that were not deleted. And then the user interface could have just updated with the response of all the array. That's a very expensive solution, right? Because these could be a lot of courses, right? It could be a very, very expensive response. And it's unnecessary because I already have a cache of most of the data here in the user interface. I already have most of that array, right? It would be wasteful for if I have 200 objects array, that it would be wasteful for you to send me back 199 elements because I am removing one. Right? So there would be a lot of data going back and forth unnecessarily. So the other option is that the other option is that I know the one that you deleted, and once I get a response from you that you have successfully deleted it, then I can do the same thing in the user interface, right? And so to synchronize. So okay, you deleted it. Okay, the server says, yeah, I was able to delete it. Then on the client says, okay, well, I will also delete it in the user interface, right? So that we are in sync, right? So that's less expensive, right? There is not all this chatter coming back from the server, right? And we just update to be in sync. And that works well if you're the only person making modifications. Right, if you have multiple users, adding and removing and deleting and accessing and changing stuff, then that doesn't work, right? Because I might be working with a stale array, right? I only see 3, but actually there's some other professors added 2 more courses, another one deleted another course, the other one changed the title, and I'm looking at an old array here, right? But we don't have that case here, especially since in my case, I am the author of the courses, and it makes no sense. Typically there's only one author and only one teacher, and that teacher modifies their courses on their own, right? We don't have like a multi set of professors editing a whole bunch of courses at the same time, right? It's my courses, I'm the author. Anyway, so if the other option is to once I know that you successfully deleted it, I can go fetch it again. I can, like, for instance, if I refresh, it went to fetch again the courses, and it updates the user interface. That's also very expensive, right? Going to fetch 199 courses because I deleted 1 out of 200, right? That's expensive. So I'm going to go with option 2. Option 2 says that you were successful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing that you did on the client. I'm going to calculate the new courses. I'm going to splice out. I'm going to say, set courses, right? It's not going to be the data because the data here is just a 200, right? So that's useless. So I'm going to say, courses dot filter, right? I want to keep all the courses that are not the ID that I just deleted, right? So if I go back and I refresh, right? So now these are in sync, right? The client and the server display the same 2 courses. But this time around, if I delete, notice that it deleted from the server and deleted from the client, right? And if I look at the server, indeed it deleted it, and it immediately notices updated immediately on the client. If I refresh, notice that the update stays permanent. Okay. All right, excellent. Everybody good? That makes sense? All right. Then let's create a course. Let's create a course. So for instance, I'd like to have maybe an input field where I can type the title of my course, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little state variable, so I can implement a local form where I can edit the course, right? And so here maybe I implement a little input field where I can type the course name, right? And I can say that the value is the course.title, and that on change, I am going to take I'm going to update the course title like that, right? What if the response is 400? Will you still delete the course? In my implementation, yes. We'll deal with that in a minute. Yeah, we'll handle errors in a second. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Yeah, so I'm editing the course title. Oops. Do that. So yeah, so I can type in the title, and then we can add maybe a plus, right, or button that says button, add course or something, right? And this is a button success. Okay. Refresh. So then I want to, when I click on the add, I want to send this object that I just created, right, of a course. I want to send it over to the server so that the server can then store it and permanently in the array of courses, right? So what we could do is we can say const add course, and so by convention we use Axios delete for removing, Axios get, right, for retrieving, and Axios post, right, for creating new content, right? That's a convention, right? So I'm going to send an object. What object? I'm going to send the course object. I'm going to send the course object. And now the response, in this case, I am going to respond with a new course that was actually created, right? Which is going to include a new primary key and any other default values that need to be in there. I can add that on the server in the database, right? So notice that I'm passing the course object, which in this case is just going to have a title, right? Because we're adding the title right here, right? So it only has a title, doesn't have a primary key, right? The primary key I'm going to add it in the server, right? And this is when I click on a button to create, right? Add success. So I'm going to do and say on click. I'm going to call add course. Right? Call add course, which is going to send the course state variable where I have been saving the title. Okay. All right. So let's try it out. So let's cool this out. So notice if I say add, right? It says that I sent a request to API/courses and say that there's no such URL API courses, right? And that's true. There's no one on the server that knows how to handle the request, right? So he came back saying, nope, there's no such post API courses. So let's create it. Let's create it. So let's go into the server and let's create the app, app.post, right? That is going to have the new course is going to, the object that comes from the client, from the browser, will be available in the request.body, right? So that contains the title, right? Right now it's just the title. right? And it's going to also include a primary key, right, as a timestamp, and then I'm going to change it to a string. Okay. Then I'm going to push the new course into database, and I'm going to respond with the new course. Actually, I'll respond with the new course. That, all right. So let's try it out. All right, so let's refresh. Okay, these are my 3 courses again. Now, you say, well, didn't we delete the other 2 courses? That's because we changed code in the server, and NodeMon restarted the server, right? So which resets the array of courses. Right? So I have it here. So let's try it out. So this time around, I say, rocket propulsion, blah, blah, aerodynamics, and this is, organic chemistry. My boss is a chemical engineer. So do an add. And well, almost, almost. Let's see. Do it work? There's post. Okay, post worked this time. It didn't give us a 4-4. Okay, sorry about that. Could you please explain post? Yeah, so it's a convention, right? So there are basically 4. I mean, there's more, but there's 4 HTTP methods that we can use, right? And so it's a convention that when you are retrieving data from the server, you use HTTP GET, right? And if you are deleting data on the server, right, we use HTTP delete. If we are creating content, right, we use HTTP post. And when we are modifying content, right, we use HTTP put. So that's only a convention. It's a under the banner called RESTful, application programming interface, right? APIs. So RESTful APIs. REST is a set of conventions, right, of how you should write these URLs, okay, and what is the protocol of communication between the client and the server. REST stands for representational state transfer, right? It's a name of a set of conventions of how to name. For instance, one of the conventions is that in the URL, you should only use nouns, plural nouns, right? So courses, for instance, that's a plural noun. Also, in the embed, you can embed inside of these URLs, you can embed primary keys like we're doing here. See that? But you should not embed anything else, only nouns and primary keys, no verbs. Okay. So that, again, that's a convention. If you want to pass more parameters, then you should use a query string. So the primary key embedded in the path parameter, but any other data, you can send it as a query string, or if it's an object, you should send it in the body, right? An HTTP body. Another convention is that we use a prefix, right, to the URLs to distinguish these URLs from URLs that are meant for humans, like a URL that returns an HTML document, right? So an HTML document, usually it's graphical, it's meant for humans to look at, right? So for instance, this URL is meant for rendering something that a human might see. But this URL is not meant for human consumption, right? And so to distinguish these 2 URLs, we choose a well-known prefix. An API is, one of the more common prefixes. Then should we use APIs rather than API? No, just API. Application Programming Interface. Right? And an interface already assumes that you have many URLs, many endpoints to integrate. Right? So it's API. It's an acronym, Application Programming Interface. It's an interface. And an interface usually contains a lot of things. If it's APIs plural, it means you have many APIs. An API to deal with courses, which is a set of URLs for the courses, and then you have a whole bunch of other sets of URLs. So it's a plural of plurals. So no, it's API. Another common acronym or prefix is REST, R-E-S-T. So instead of API, you could use REST. Another prefix which is popular is data/data, meaning you're accessing data. You're not accessing something for humans. You're accessing data that is meant to be as a data exchange between two programs, right? The program that is running a Node server under Express, right? Express Node server, and the program which is the browser, the JavaScript running in React.js running instead of a browser. So these two programs are interfacing through this API, right? That I'm sending a post or a delete or a get, right, to the other process, and the process then sends back a response. Make sense? All right. Yeah, there we go. So we created there it is, title. Oh, it's supposed to be name, not title. Okay, that's why we couldn't see it. So yeah, so let's fix that. So on the client, it's name, not title. Okay, so this is name. There we go. All right, so let's go back here. Let's try this again. Let's refresh. Let's delete this one. Delete. And also when we append it, instead of push, that adds it at the end, I think the way you put it at the beginning, it's unshift. Yeah, unshift. Unshift, I think, puts it at the beginning of the array. It says, in the server side, is it a good practice to create routes for all the modules courses? Yes, absolutely. So we're creating a set of URLs, right, of routes to deal with courses, right? And you'll typically find that you're always going to implement the same set of routes, right, for implementing the same kinds of operations. And there are 4 basic operations, right? You're going to create, post, you're going to delete, you're going to read or retrieve, right? And you're going to update, and so that makes an acronym called CRUD, create, read, update, and delete, right? And you're going to want to do that for every single data type. You want to be able to CRUD courses. You want to be able to CRUD modules. You need to be able to CRUD assignments. So any data type, right, will have a CRUD operation. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So there's our get. This is our R of reading or retrieving. There's my delete. Here's our create, and soon we'll do update in a minute. Okay, so let's make sure we have our create working. Right. So if I have this spacecraft, blah blah blah, and then this one's the course, Grok 101 is a new AI by XAI. So I'm going to do an add, and there it is. See that Grok 101. So it adds it. If I refresh, it's there, right? Grok 101. Oh, it's unshifted. I unshifted it. So it's being added at the beginning. So I need to update my user interface so that they're in sync. Right here, instead of adding at the end, we can add it at the beginning, right? So that it matches what the server is doing. Okay, so this is Grok 101, and there's a chat GPT 102 add. So it's added at the beginning, right? And if I refresh, if I see here, notice that indeed it adds adding at the beginning, right? So I refresh and notice that it's loaded correctly, right? All right, awesome. So let's do one more. We want to update. We want to update. Maybe change the title. So what we could do is that we can edit, right? We can edit and say, button edit. And so what we can do is that we can copy the course onto the form so that we can then edit it, and then we can click maybe on an update button, right? That will send the updated version to the server, right? So if I do an on-click on this, on-click, we can set course, right, to be this course, right? So if I do an edit, not working. No, wait, set course. Then map core, set course. Then course. Why are you not? Oh, name. This is name. That's why. Edit. There we go. Right. So I am copying it there. And let's add a button so we can edit it. We can save it. Right. So let's add another button. And then we can say, button. And this is going to be an update button. Like that. Well, not add course. We'll need a function called update course. So we'll say const, right, update course async. It's going to send a put. See, my AI already knows about the RESTful set of conventions, right? So it's going to send the API, right, to the noun, correct noun, right? It's going to encode the ID at the end of the course that we're updating. I'm going to send as part of the body all the updates, including the new title or anything I might have changed, right? And then locally, I'm going to make the same changes that I'm going to do in the server. I'm going to make the same changes here locally on the user interface, right? I'm going to swap out, right, the old course with the new one, right? If the IDs match. Okay. All right. Okay, so what's wrong with my prettier? What don't you like with my prettier? Oh, yeah. So okay, so we have to fix the right here. So on click, we're going to call the update course here. So update course, save that. All right, good. Now obviously I'm going to get the same error, right? If I edit, right, say 103, and I click on update, it's going to fail, right? Because there is no put, right, on the server. So let's create it. Let's go back to the server and let's create a put here. Say app.put. So my AI already knows that this is an update. So it's going to look up the ID. It's going to find it. If it finds it, then fine. If it doesn't, right, it's going to complain saying that there is no such course with that ID. And it's going to update the course of that index. It's going to copy whatever body properties, new title, right, new description, new whatever. It's going to spread it on my on that object. And the ID, I don't know if they have to do anything with the ID. No, I'm not going to update the ID. There's no need to, right? Because the ID is not changing. And then I'm going to respond with a success. I'm going to say 200. Yeah, success. And then what else? I need to close this parentheses here. Okay. All right. Let's see if it works. Let's refresh. Okay, there's our courses. Let's edit, aerodynamics and change it to 101. And let's clear this and do an update. Okay, so that maybe it worked. Let's see. Oh, you know what? On the server, it should be request body. It should be, you know, whatever was there already, and then spread the body, which is an override of whatever new values, right, for whatever properties have changed. Anyway, let's try it again. Let's refresh. So edit this. Let's a little change. So update. Okay, so on the server, it went out. Let's see. The put went out. I did send a new name. Does that make sense? The name went out. And the response came back as 200. Very good. Now on the client, what am I doing? On the client and the update, what am I doing? I'm checking to see. I'm recreating the courses, and response data. No, response data is 200. So no. Yeah. So if it's the ID, I'm going to. What am I going to do? I'm going to update it with course, right? That has the update, the new title, whatever, right? Otherwise, I'm going to keep the old. Yeah, exactly. Right. So let's do that. Let's refresh. Notice that it's had been updated correctly on the server, right? But not locally, right? This is 101. Say it's 203. Update. There we go. So it's updating both places. If I refresh, I'm in sync. Everybody good? Question says, why don't you just use the request body? Yeah, I guess I could, right? Because it has everything. But you know, it could be implemented in such a way that I would maybe only send the fields that have changed, right? Maybe if I only change the title, maybe it would be wasteful for me to send everything, right? And maybe I would only send a subset of the object that would only contain the title or the name or the date, starting date or something, right? So in that sense, now I'm spreading over it so that I'm overriding whatever used to be there. I'm replacing it with this new value. Okay. All right. So yeah. Okay. So we've noticed that we've been implementing all the network access and chatter between the client and the server right here in my dashboard code, right? So that in general is considered to be a bad practice, right? So instead of having all this communication between the client and the server here in the UI stuff, instead a better practice, right, is to move that, move it to a separate file. Okay. And because this is all this communication is all about courses, I'm going to put it under the courses folder. And the name of this file, it could be different options. One good name would be services or service.js. Service comes from, we are talking to the server, right? And so our service file gives us communication with the server, right? So that's a good name. Another name is that a good name would be that you are on the server, you want to talk to the server, and we are on the client side, right? And we want to communicate with the server remotely. So another good name for this file is the client side, the client file, right? And in here, what we want to do is that we want to implement all these functions that deal with URLs and talking to servers and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. We want to, have that implemented elsewhere, not in the user interface, right? We would need to export all these guys. So export. Oops. Export. export, okay. The other problem here is that we have this set courses, right? That's user interface stuff, right? So this is communication stuff, right? I'm communicating with the server, blah, 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 right? So this has to live here, but this should live in the user interface. So let's remove all this. So let's remove all this, right? But notice that they're all caring about the response data, blah, blah, blah. So what we're going to do is that they're all going to return the response.data, right? And then the user interface will do whatever it wants with it. Some of them are going to ignore it. Like for instance, update course is going to totally ignore the response.data, right? The delete is also going to, because it just has status stuff, right? It doesn't have any data. But the fetch, I do care about the response.data, and the add, I also care about that, right? So once I have that in the UI, right, in my component, I can import all those functions. Now I can import them one at a time, right? I mean, I could do import, fetch courses, right, from the client. The problem with doing that is that I already have a function called fetch courses here. And so that would be a collision, right, between the names of the functions that I'm importing and the functions that I already have in the user interface. So I think a better option would be to import the whole thing. You can import all of them and then give them a prefix here, or give them an alias here. You say as. Now, a good alias would be the same name as the file, right? So I'm going to say as client. Now I can, for instance, not do this. Don't do this in the here, which is a bad practice. Instead, right, use the courses, because they're turning the data, and the data is the courses, right? So await client, client fetch, blah, 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 and then there's the courses, like that. See that? Right. Then in deletes, do the same thing. We don't want this, right? Instead, it returns with a status, right? We say service, so we'll do await client, or delete course. We're passing the ID, right? And in here, we do the same thing. We're ignoring the response. See that? We're responding. We're ignoring the status. And we're gonna handle the error messages in a minute. Well, the errors that might come from the server. Same thing here. We're gonna remove that. Update course. Again, we're gonna do an await client update course. And this is an add course. So instead, we're going to do const new course, right? It'll be await client add course. We're not going to do that, right? And then this is the new course, right? Response data, like that. Okay. So this should work just the same way that was working up to this point. Oh, we don't have Axios on the other side. So we're going to move the Axios from here, because we don't want to talk to the server from here. Instead, we're going to move it over to this file. What else do we need? Course. 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 Okay. So we need to pass in the course here. We need to pass in the course. We need to pass in the course here. Where else? I think that's it, right? Data line 11. Oh, line 11 here. All right, so delete course, update course. I need to pass in the course here, right? Pass in the course. Wait, I am passing the course. Yeah, okay. And add course. Yeah, okay. So I am doing that already. What is the complaint? Line 11 data. Line 11 data. Oh, fetch course, blah, 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 blah. fetch course return, huh? What? Line 11 data. Oh, in the dashboard. In the dashboard, line 11 data. Oh, fetch course is okay. This is the courses here. Assignment to constant, blah 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 blah. Assignment constant. Add fetch courses. Fetch courses. Fetch courses. Okay, no, but this is a local const. Okay, there we go. So now it's working, right? We have the same thing as before. We can delete. We can add a course. We can edit it like we did before, right? Update. Yeah, it works. Everything works the same way. But yeah, so now it's a better solution, right? We've moved over all that communication to the server off to a separate file, and also now we can handle errors, right? Like I know delete can come back within 404 because I passed in the wrong ID, for instance, right? And same thing with update, right? I'm passing the wait a minute, update course takes the course. Oh yeah, it takes the course. Okay. Yeah, because the ID might be wrong, right? So we can wrap these inside of a try-catch block, right, to handle those errors, right? So for instance, I can do a try-catch here and put this inside here, and then do a catch and grab the error. Or I could maybe display the error in a little box, right? Same thing for update. I can put this in a try like that, and then do a catch here. So what's happening is that now, if this fails because it comes back with a 404, right, it will not execute the second line, right? This will throw an exception, and then it'll be caught by this catch here, right? So if I wasn't able to delete from the server, I'm not going to update the user interface either, right? And same thing with the update, right? If I wasn't able to update in the server, then I'm not going to update in the client either. Okay, that makes sense, right? Okay, okay. So yeah, so we're pretty much done with the dashboard. Now, say I navigate to a spacecraft design. So in spacecraft design, notice that I am displaying spacecraft design, right? But what about the new courses, like this one? If I click on it, notice that I don't have it, right? Because the dashboard is using the courses from the server, whereas my courses screen is still using the database in the client. No, it's not using the database in the server, it's using the one in the client. So there's a mismatch, right? There is no such course with that ID in the local database, right? There is an ID in the remote database, but not here. Right, so we need to replace also our courses screen, this one, that parses the ID correctly, right? Looks at the path name, blah, blah, blah. But then, right, it's using the database, right? It's not using the remote database in the server, right? So we need to fix this. We need to fix this, right? So how do we fix it? So we need to fetch, knowing the ID, we need to fetch the course from the server that has that ID, right? So we can, on the server, we can implement a, find me, get, this one gets all the courses, but I want that one that retrieves a single course, right? So let's do that. So this is, we can say, oh, there it is, app courses, the ID, very good. It finds it. If the course doesn't exist, it sends an error, perfect, right? But if we do find it, I am going to return that course by its ID. Okay, so we can try it out. We can try it out here. So if courses, let's refresh. So if I say RS102, and provide the ID, it retrieves that one course. So it's perfect. Excellent. It's working. So on the client, right, in our client JS, we can implement a fetch course by ID. I'm going to say, export const fetch course, and I pass an ID. Perfect. So it's going to retrieve it and encode the ID as part of the URL. Excellent. And just responds to the data. Excellent. So now on in my courses here, instead of doing this, I'm going to create this as a state variable. I'm going to create this as a state variable, right? And this is going to be a set course, right? And this is going to be a use state, right? Which is going to be an object, and that object is going to come from the server, right? I'm going to have to go fetch it from the server and populate this, and then it'll presumably render here the name and everything. Okay. So we need use state. So let's import that. Let's import use state here. Use state like that. I'll also need use effects because I want to go fetch that on load, right? So I want to do a const fetch course, which is going to use the service. I have to import the service, the client import client. Perfect. So I can do fetch client, fetch course, going to pass in the course ID. Perfect, right? And I'm going to set the course, right, for whatever I return from the server. And I'm going to do this on load, right? So the use effect is going to call fetch course, and that should grab it. Let's see. That still doesn't work. Probably because the server restarted and that course doesn't exist anymore, right? So let's go back to the dashboard. Let's go back to the dashboard. And let's refresh. There we go. So this should work, right? 101. But what about new courses, right? So this is a new course, and I'm gonna say add. There it is. If I click on it, there it is. See that? This is a new course, and it went to fetch it. It fetched it with its unique ID, brand new ID, came back from the server, has a name, right? And with a new course, I can edit it too, right? I can go back to the dashboard, and I can edit this. This is an old course. Right? I'm going to do an update, and I can navigate, and it's the correct name for the course. Perfect. Excellent. So now notice that the modules is not rendering, right? The modules is not rendering because there are no modules for that ID, right? So we need to be able to create new modules for that particular course, right? So before when we were implementing courses existed without a worry, that they belong to any, in any particular context, right? Courses just existed, in a global context, right? But whereas modules can't, right? Modules can only exist, right, within the context of a particular course. Well, unless we think of, like we did earlier, that certain modules could be global, right? That they don't belong to any one course, or that it belongs to many courses. Right? But let's not explore that. So let's talk about, we have an idea of a module of a course, right? And that doesn't exist. Well, I mean, it does exist, but the modules don't, right? In this one, modules do exist, right? But for a given new course, the modules don't exist, right? So how do I create modules, right, within the context of a course, right? So let's do that. Let's so say I'm in modules, right? I want a little form to create new modules, right? So let's close this, and let's look at module list. So modules and module lists here. So I would like to be able to edit here a small module. So const module, set module, use state with an emptier like that. Okay. So I have use state, perfect. And then locally, I like to be able to edit maybe here line item, maybe an input field that allows me to edit the module name, right? And the value is the module name, and close the line item here like that. Now I don't remember if the modules is it name. I forget if it's name. So let's take a look at the modules. Oh, not here. Modules JSON. Yeah, name. Right. So I'm editing the name. Okay, so I'm editing the name, and I think I can already edit, right? Yeah, I can already edit it. So let's add a button that I can add the module. So maybe I put a button that I add the module. Right, there it is. And I'm going to handle that, const add module. And let's, so what do I want to do here? I want to post because I'm creating, right? And the convention is that if you're creating new things, you use post, right? So we'll implement that in a client in modules, a client file that will need a URL where we can post, right? And a good URL would be, module URL. It would be something like, const. So it'll be something like, HTTP : localhost. So this module. Actually, I'll probably need both. I'll need courses, and I'll probably need the one for module too. Const modules URL like that. So in the create module, I'll do something like or add module, or const add module. Okay, so notice that the API already knows that something important, that modules can't exist outside of the context of a course, right? And notice that the way we implement the modules is that a module knows what course it belongs to. See that? So it knows that they exist inside of a context of a course, right? And the way we know that, the way we represent that is by the module having a course field, right? That references the course that it belongs to. So here we're going to encode the ID of the course that the new module that I'm creating belongs to. I'm going to add it as part of the URL, right? And so it'll be, courses / right, the ID of the course, and then modules, right? So this also follows a convention that the URLs that you use for manipulating or interacting with the data should follow a hierarchical structure, right? In that you start off from some kind of root, right, and then using the nouns and the IDs, you can navigate further down the data structure, the huge data structure of courses and modules and assignments, right? So that from the root, right, you can, starting from a high level, you can navigate further down deeper into your data structure, right? Including, and the intent is that nouns earlier in the path are parents to nouns that are later in the path, right? Very much like a path in the directory structure, right? Where, directories up higher in the path are parents to directories later in the path, right? So same thing, it's hierarchical. So this establishes, the API courses / course ID modules establishes a one-to-many relationship between courses and modules, or at least a relationship saying that the module is inside or is related to the course. Okay. I'm also passing the module, which includes the title, the name of the module, right? Any other descriptors, and it's going to come back presumably with the brand new module that has been created. Okay. All right. Okay, we export that, blah, blah, blah. We're going to import it from here. We're going to say, import star as a client from client. No, I think client is in the same directory, no? Yeah, this kind of, okay. And then so add module, we can say that, okay, this is using the old syntax .then. I'm not going to use the old syntax. I'm going to use the new one. So this is async. So I'm not going to use this older syntax. Although I think the assignment shows you how to use the older syntax still. So there it is. So add module, blah, 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 course. I'm going to pass in the course ID, the new module. Here's the new module created on the server. And I'm going to update the module. Well, I guess I don't need to update it. Presumably, I would add it to an array of modules, which I don't have, right? And so we'll do that a little later. Let's see. Okay, so if I click on this add, right, I want to call that add module. I'm going to say, on click, I'm going to call add module right here, right there, right? And now if I do that, I need on the client, I need on the client, I need Axios, right? I need to import Axios here, right? So there's import Axios. Okay. So notice if I do that, right, this is going to create a post, but there is no post on the server, right? So let's implement that post on the server in a different directory. So we'll create a directory for modules, and we'll create routes. Okay, and this is going to have all the CRUD operations for modules, right? So we're going to do let's see, let's import the database, right? So we'll import the database. So database from database. Is that where it is? Yeah. So this is modules, right? So no, not course routes. These are module routes. Module routes. And this is going to implement all our CRUD operations. Let's implement a few. So we say so app dot retrieve all the modules. Yeah, I mean, this one is useful for. Is that something you would normally use? You would retrieve a single module. Very good. Yeah. So request params, blah, 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 returns the single module. Very good. Yeah. How about delete? Yeah, I have my AI is doing everything. I think that's right. Post module. Not quite. Put. We'll see how these. Let's review this. Okay, so retrieve all the modules. Yeah, that makes sense. I like to be able to retrieve all the modules. Now, this is typically for development purposes of retrieving all the modules. Is that something you would actually do in the user interface? I mean, where would you render all the modules? Right? There could be hundreds of courses, and each course could have dozens of modules. Right? What UI would you need to display thousands and thousands of modules? Right? Typically, you would only display modules within the context of a course, right? Not all the modules all at once. Nevertheless, it's useful for development, right? For testing and things like that, for us developers, but not for human consumption. This one makes more sense, right? Retrieve a particular module if you know its primary key. Yeah, that makes sense. And And it's implemented using ID. Perfect. Yeah, yeah. The other one that is not here, that is one of the more important ones, is given a course, I like to know the modules in that course, right? So let's implement that, right? So app.get API courses, you give me the course ID, and then I want the modules for that course, right? So I'm going to grab the ID is going to filter the modules whose module.course ID. Is that what we use? No, it's course, not course ID. Right, so course matches the ID. Perfect. Yep. And then returns the modules. Excellent. Yep, that's the implementation. Given the course ID, give me the modules for that course. Get the modules whose ID is that. Perfect. Yeah. Delete the modules. Yeah, that looks right. Now post module. So post module, looks like you're implementing instantiating a module outside of the context of a course. That makes no sense, right? So this actually, we want to provide the ID of the course, maybe called CID. And then when you create the module, yes, you're gonna pass me the title, the name, the description in the body, perfect. But I'm also gonna add the fact that this module belongs to a course. So I'm gonna add the course in the params is in there, course ID, right? And then I add it to the beginning, perfect, yeah. And then I return the new modules. I'm just checking the delete is 204. Okay, yeah. Get modules. Okay, perfect. Post is retrieve the new modules. Put finds the index, blah blah, does the update, yeah, it returns 200. Yeah, very good, excellent. So this needs to be exported, right? So let's export this. So this will be export default module routes, and then in app.js we're going to import it. Let's say import the module routes, and we're going to pass it app. Perfect. So now that's running, I should be able to come here, right, and ask for all the modules. Oops, is the server not running? Oh, it crashed. Oh my goodness, what's going on? Unsupported, blah blah blah, unsupported, JSON, starting up. Database is not supported, blah 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 blah. Resolving ES modules imported, yada 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 yada. Huh? What? What's going on with database? Oh, maybe in the new module. Database is there. Hey, what's wrong with the database? What don't you like about my database? What was the error? Directory import. Oh, okay. No. Yeah, no, this is database /index.js. Maybe that's what it meant. Yeah, I think it restarted. What about courses though? What do we do for courses? Courses. Oh yeah, okay, we did the right import. Okay. All right. There we go. We have all the modules. See that? And we should be able to retrieve a single module by saying module / like that. Perfect. We should also be able to retrieve modules for a given course, right? So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3 modules in that course. Okay, so we should be able to say course says, core says the ID and then the modules. No, wait, what? Oh, RS101. Okay, so let's put that in there. RS101. So these are the modules only for that course. All right, excellent. So we're done, right? So we should be able to now go back. We should be able to go back in the UI. We should be able to go back and, for instance, not only do add, we should be able to retrieve all the modules, find the modules for course. I give the course ID. Perfect. Yeah. Updated module. My AI is adding it, so it's a put. After you've done several of these, you'll notice that they all look very, very similar to one another. So update module, delete module. Yep. I don't need that. Delete. Find modules for course. Add module in the course. I think those are it. So if we go to module list, we should be able to retrieve the modules for a course and be able to remove this database here, right? So we should be able to say, const modules, right? It's we're going to remove that, and instead we are going to effect. We're going to use effect here. Use effect, and we're going to const fetch modules using the modules for course clients, and we're going to set the modules, and we're going to call this on use effect. Fetch modules. There we go. Let's see if that blows up. So if I go to another dashboard, Rocket Propulsion. Now these modules are coming from the server. They're not coming from the client. Notice that from the client now we can just remove the database there. See that? So the modules are coming from the server, right? For different courses. These are modules for that course. This is for this course, right? For that course. Now, if I create a new course, do an add. If I go there, it has no modules. How do we add a module now, right? So add module, what is it going to do? It's going to go to the module, add module, going to pass the course ID, the module, new module, and locally we're going to update our set modules. We're going to append at the beginning this new module, and I'm going to put the modules at the end like that, right? So let's see if it works. So add. Did that work? Let's see. Okay, well, I did send it. Looks like it posted. Okay, came back with an ID. Let's see. Let's refresh. Yeah, we created the module. See that? Right? New module. Add. New module 1, 2, 3. Add. Right? If I refresh, these are all modules that have been added to the server permanently. Right? If I go to dashboard, I go to these modules, but if I go to my new course, it has the new modules. See that? Obviously, there's much more, right? To delete the course, delete the module, right? Or edit the module, and I'll leave that to you, right? Excellent. All right, any questions? All right, if there are no questions, could you demo how to show the error message from the server? Yeah, there's the assignment does have that. The assignment does have error messages, handling errors. There's an extra credit here that shows you that in the response, you can send the status, but you can also send a little JSON object, like with a message. And then on the client, you can retrieve that message, right? You can retrieve that message, catch it, and then display the error in the client like that. So yeah, go through the extra credit in the assignment, and it documents how to do that. You can display maybe the error in the red box like that. And you set it into this you show the error in a state variable, right? And then you display it using a div. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you. Good night.